What's up guys, welcome back to another GGF video. Now today we're going to be taking a look at the InWin 301. Now if you're watching this video, you probably have seen our time-lapse build we did called Arctic. We still actually got the build together. We got the Arctic sort of logo there. I did take the front decal off I added just so you can see how the case looks in its natural form. Now in this video we're going to be sort of expressing our thoughts on the case, or what this case is all about. So let's jump in and have a look. The InWin 301 is small, and I mean real small, coming in at 365mm high, 188mm wide, and 370mm long, and it's 6.6 kilograms. Putting it next to an average 240mm radiator really shows its true size. At first you might think it's an mATX case, but the 301 actually supports mATX and micro ATX. The 301 comes in either black with red ambient front lighting or white with blue front lighting, and we of course have been sent the white version. If you're familiar with the InWin 303, then you feel right at home with the 301. The main difference between the two is the 301 has a radiator spot removed from the top like in the 303 but moved across to the front. And you won't be fitting any 360mm radiators in the 301 like the 303 unless you perform some serious modding. We'll take a look at full radiator support later on. In terms of being like the 303, both side panels work in the exact same way. The main side panel is a tinted tempered glass panel with a fantastic top release mechanism that works like a charm. I also really appreciate how InWin have added these little fine dots to the panel that hide away the inside frame of the case once the side panel is on. The rear side panel uses two captive thumb screws to secure the panel in place. One thing you might notice with the 301 is the top and front of the chassis are complete solid panels. No vents, grooves or mesh at all. Airflow is either entered via the bottom of the case or via the rear side panel through some small grooves. I'm really worried how well the front intake is going to be, especially once you have all the cables installed in the back area. The bottom also has a removable fan filter, which is a nice touch. The only plastic I can see on the 301 are the case feet. The rest of the case is from SECC steel. The case feet are also removable via a secret screw location under each rubber pad. Front panel I/O, we see large power button at the top, followed by a reset and hard drive activity LEDs. The backlit InWin logo has been carried over from the 303. As mentioned earlier, the black version will have this area light up red and the white version will light up blue. Unfortunately, not RGB. Then there's audio ports and two USB 3.0 ports. Moving on to radiator support, the 301 has three radiator locations. There's a front that supports up to a 240mm max radiator. Max thickness on this radiator will depend on the length of your GPU installed. The bottom, although InWin only states the bottom is for fans only, will support a 240mm radiator, but if PCIe slots 2, 3 or 4 are used, then the radiator fans will be obstructed. So in terms of actually fitting a radiator at the bottom of the 301, you'll need to only install one GPU with a water block on it. Probably why it's not really listed as a radiator support in the specifications. Then there's the rear of the 301, which supports a 120mm radiator only. I find if you're wanting to water cool two GPUs and the CPU in the 301, you're just not going to have enough radiator locations for optimal temperatures. For storage, there's this interesting multifunction cage up the top towards the front. This holds one 3.5-inch hard drive, or instead can be populated with an SSD. Right under this cage on the other side, there's support for two more SSDs. I think in a case this size, there should be ample storage options for most people's needs. Some unique features I noticed was this PCIe screw cover bracket, which simply just covers all your PCIe slot screws and keeps it looking clean. InWin have also supplied a GPU support bracket to reduce GPU sag. Just to note that this isn't the only case InWin provides these in. And lastly, there's this detachable cable management system which lines up roughly to where your SATA cable should go. You simply find a spot where your cables will go and pop out the bit of plastic and then feed your cables through. But once the segment is popped out, you cannot put it back in. So basically that's the case in detail there. Now, some of the areas that we sort of had a few issues with or we didn't really like, one thing is the power supply length. It does state you can fit up to 160mm, which is correct. A longer one has room, but there's no way to fit a longer power supply in purely because of the structure of the frame. It just keeps on hitting that structure, so you just can't fit a longer one in. I probably wouldn't recommend putting a longer one in. I guess if you had one lying around, you can't use it, but I did install an SFX. Now you might be wondering why. That's going the other end of the scale, going really short. I just did that, which allowed me to have a lot more room up the top. So if you're familiar with an SFX power supply, they're really short. They're probably only about this long. It actually gave me a lot more room up the top for cables. And if you actually notice in the time-lapse build, I had all my tubes running through. So I think an SFX, you can get up to about 650 watts these days. And that is probably enough for what you're going to be putting in such a small little case like this. The other area is case temperature. Now in my build, I'll take this off. In my build, I only ran the CPU in the loop. As you can see, I don't have the video card in the loop. One main reason is because this is the MSI Armor RX 480. There's no water blocks for these cards, so I couldn't possibly get a block on it. But I think that's a good idea because I am feeding cool air from the bottom straight to this air-cooled video card. Now, if I was to add this to the loop, I would have probably had issues trying to cool this with this radiator. I wouldn't have been able to fit a radiator under here unless I mentioned earlier, only trying to use the first slot. So I might have just been able to fit one in there. It would have been tight. And considering this case can take mATX, so you can fit 2 video cards, I'm pretty much going to say there's no way you're going to be able to water cool 2 video cards and the CPU using this single radiator here, the single 240, unless you're doing some crazy modding. But I guess with a case this size, like this is just super small. Like you've seen how small it is. I think most people are probably going to go mATX anyway. mATX, 1 video card, 1 CPU, but I do kind of like the idea of just cooling the CPU with the water cooling. It gives you plenty of room for overclocking and whatnot. But apart from that, I really did like this little case. I kind of like how you have your hard drive separated. Up here you got your mechanical hard drive, your 2 SSDs. I completely sort of did all the work on the inside, did the modding, and then I still had the room up here for these hard drives. So whatever I did in the main chamber, I didn't affect my storage, which was good. A lot of cases these days, you install your radiators, you install other components, and sometimes you have to remove your hard drive support. But this one, nah, they're still here, which is nice to see. Last thing I want to cover is the price. You can find this case in Australia for $98 Australian. Now, I find that pretty sweet. You've got all steel. The only plastic, as I said, was on the feet. So I think for $98 Australian, that is good. That is at Umart. That is the cheapest I found Umart online. But yeah, that's pretty much it on this review of the InWin 301. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope you enjoyed the build that I did. Thanks for InWin Australia for sending this out, and stay tuned for next time, and thanks for watching.